I think if you would have told anybody that moved to Fort Collins in the 50s, 60s, 70s, or really even up to the 90s and early 2000s, that Fort Collins would become what it is today, they would say you're nuts. This was a college town that, along the foothills, very fun, four-season area, but small, Mayberry, everybody knows each other. I mean, truly, even when I was growing up, having my last name with, there was 5 brothers and a sister that all came up through the 70s and 80s going through Bolts, Lesher, Fort Collins High School. Some stick around to stay at Colorado State. Soukup was just a well-known name, and when I was going through school and I introduced myself, hey, I'm Patrick Soukup, they would say, oh, who's your uncle or who's your dad? Not so much anymore. Fort Collins has grown to 180,000 people. It has a diverse economy. It continues to grow. Windsor, Johnstown, Loveland, Wellington, Timnath has had exponential growth, but the entire area of northern Colorado just continues to grow. So I was thinking back on what was 10 years ago like. I wouldn't have expected us to have a Costco or a Trader Joe's or a brand new football stadium. We were used to Hughes Stadium along the foothills, and that was where we went. Now we have a amazing stadium, right, smack dab in the middle of Fort Collins. And so today's video, we're going to talk to you about what a glimpse of Fort Collins in the future may look like. Now, this is not a prediction video. This is going to be based off of statistics from population growth to traffic patterns, developments that are currently under review, things that you might expect to change the face and landscape over the next decade. What's up, everybody? My name is Patrick Soukup with Soukup Real Estate Services here in Fort Collins, and this is the Living in Fort Collins YouTube channel, where you come to learn everything there is to know about Fort Collins and northern Colorado, eating, sleeping, playing, and a glimpse into the future. Now, we love making YouTube videos, but we are licensed real estate agents in the state of Colorado. So if you're considering buying, selling, or investing, give us a call, text, or email, and we've got your back. Now, in today's video, we are going to jump right in, and we're going to discuss different things such as population, traffic, developments, economy, housing. All of these things we are going to discuss, so stick around, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave a comment below or reach out to us direct, and we'd be happy to answer it. Let's get rocking. Fort Collins has a population now, depending on where you look, anywhere really between 173,000 and 180,000 people. And by the year 2050, we are expected to have 255,000 people, or a growth rate of roughly 1.35% annually. And that's really right where we've been over the last many years as far as a growth rate, 1 to 1.5%. So you can expect the city of Fort Collins to continue to grow along with these surrounding areas of Timnath, Windsor. Windsor had a population of 20,000 people in 2013. It is getting close to 40,000 people, nearly doubled. And while we don't necessarily love the traffic through Windsor with that population growth, it is just a really great little community just outside of Fort Collins, and it too continues to grow. So we are expecting a growth around Fort Collins, really in northern Colorado, to continue. So in 2033, 10 years from this year, in 2023, we should expect a population in Fort Collins of around 200 to 202,000 people. And it'll be really interesting. A lot of that will be in areas where we're going to talk about developments coming up. Now, rooftops follow residential. Now, what does that mean? As population grows, as these areas, northern Colorado, so Weld County and Larimer County, get close to 1 million people, we start to see companies like the Amazons of the world, the Costcos, bigger operation, Top Golfs, that start to look at us and say, hey, this is a prime area, meets our demographics as far as population growth, how far people are willing to travel. So commercial rooftops follow residential rooftops. So we will continue to see these new amenities come, but again, as I said, I would never have thought we were going to have a Costco or a Trader Joe's or, what could have been a really amazing mall that was over $300 million that was developed, a phenomenal hotel in the Elizabeth where the Armadillo used to be, and now is just this phenomenal world-class hotel. So as we continue to see population, we'll see amenities make their way here. And in fact, they already are. Martin Lind is making this push for this world-class hotel water park where the ranch is currently, Budweiser Event Center, increasing that. In fact, they're currently building out there right now, and both sides of that interstate with a massive walkway across the top, really going to be something that Fort Collins and Northern Colorado is going to benefit from. Now, Loveland is going to be the actual home base of this, but this is just an example of some amenities. Also in Windsor, the Future Legends Sports Park that's really going to be complete. Right now, that has one of the country's largest inflatable domes, indoor domes, and it's huge. And in fact, when they were originally pumping that thing up, it actually ripped because of poor weather and poor planning or whatever, and was $10 million to replace that bubble, that dome that you see. So that sports complex will continue to grow and hopefully house semi-pro sports for soccer and baseball, and then house really world-class tournaments for soccer, for baseball, for softball, and then areas like that hotel at the ranch are going to benefit from it. Now, other amenities are going to be things that come along with the needed with the growth. We're going to need things like resources and the Glade Reservoir, which isn't necessarily going to happen for sure. It does look like it's going to pass, but we don't know. It's going to be out north of Fort Collins. It's not going to be as big as far as land mass goes, as far as Horsetooth. Now, my research did show that it was going to be 3 times the size of Horsetooth, but based off of recent research, it looks like it's going to be a similar size as far as water storage goes for that the current Horsetooth Reservoir has. And I'm going to have to check on that, but I am pretty sure that it's going to be right around 170,000 acre feet of water, and which is very comparable to the Horsetooth Reservoir, but isn't going to take as much landmass. Horsetooth Reservoir is 6 miles wide, but along with that Glade Reservoir development, there's going to be walkways, paths, natural areas that people can enjoy. And in fact, that's one thing that the city of Fort Collins, it's a platinum rated bike community. We are going to continue to build on our paved roads, our paved trails. We're going to see a connection between really Bellevue all the way to Greeley along the Pooter Trail, northeast Fort Collins over Montava, Mosaic. They're going to start to see some paths that connect into the Pooter Trail. We're going to connect the Power Trail over across McMurray and Harmony Road that will make that safer. So we will continue to build these paved trails that really make Fort Collins bike friendly for anybody who doesn't want to necessarily get on the roads, but stay off the roads and onto those paved trails. Now, we are also going to see, just recently released actually, the Foothills Mall redevelopment plan, where they're going to make this mall that was $300 million back in the late 2010s, that was developed and then just kind of never became anything. The McQuinneys bought it in 2021 for pennies on the dollar, but they are also going to put in about $300 million worth of residential, office space, an indoor-outdoor type mall, make it more walk-friendly, add lot and acreage, green space, I should say, throughout this concrete jungle. But it's really going to redevelop that midtown area and hopefully bring that sales revenue that the city of Fort Collins was hoping for when Alberta bought it, redesigned it, and built it, and got so much city money, TIF funding. And hopefully we start to see that generated here starting in 2025 would be really the beginnings of the redevelopment process. That will be very exciting. And of course, like I mentioned, Topgolf is making its way through Timnath, other areas, commercial, lots of different restaurants, and an Apple store. We don't have an Apple store. I would guess that maybe in the next 10 years, we see an Apple store at that redeveloped mall, or a cheesecake factory, things like that. Those are going to be a little bit more predictions than anything, but everything else that I've talked about is actively going through the review process and being built. Montava is going to be a 30,000 person community with a school system, grocery, retail, all that you can have, a small city. Basically, the city of Windsor is going to be plopped down over by the Budweiser brewery, and we're going to have this huge deal. And in fact, this year they're starting to finally build out Montava. So we will start to see this huge project come to fruition after all these years of discussion. So Montava will be very much being built over the next 10 years because I believe it's a 20 to 30 year build out for that community. Now, okay, we've got population growth. We've got cool new amenities that are coming. What is that going to bring to Fort Collins in northern Colorado? More demand, more desirability. Supply is going to continue to be restricted on housing. Builders aren't going to be able to build them enough. So housing prices are probably going to continue to increase. One of the things that people always talk about in Fort Collins in northern Colorado is that we're about 10 years behind Boulder. So if you look at the median sales price of a Boulder home in 2013, that was $570,000. Now, what was the median sales price of a Fort Collins single family home in 2022? $600,000. So 10 years ago, Boulder was where we were at currently pricing. Now, what is Boulder at right now? This year, end of 2022, their median sales price as of the end of 2022 for the city of Boulder was $1.45 million. Now, is Fort Collins going to be 10 years behind Boulder? And in 10 years, is the median sales price of Fort Collins going to be $1.45 million? Now, we've had a couple years, the COVID years, 2020, 2021, 2022, that were really unique as far as pricing goes with these crazy appreciation numbers. So it'll very much be interesting to see if we taper off, have a little drop down. You know, city of Austin right now has a 5% price reduction. We'll have to see how that goes. But right now, if we are tracking 10 years behind Boulder, we could potentially see a median sales price in Fort Collins of $1.45 million. And when you have all that desirability, demand, commercial, growth of northern Colorado, you know, probably going to be close to 1 million people in that next 10 years. Right now we're at 700,000 basically between Weld County and Larimer County. What comes with all of that growth and people? Traffic. Somebody just recently told me that Fort Collins is very forward thinking, you know, electric vehicles, undergrounding electric, gigabyte speed internet. And I agree. But northern Colorado and I-25 are always a decade behind. And that's probably because we've seen some rapid growth. And if you've been on I-25 anytime in the last 5 years, or really it feels like since my lifetime, it's been under construction. And I feel like it will continue to be under construction. Currently, we are seeing a $1.2 billion project come to an end, a 20-mile stretch basically from Berthoud to Fort Collins of extending it to 3 lanes, having a toll lane, express toll lane, and hopefully relieve some of that traffic. But my guess is in 10 years, when Fort Collins hits 202,000 people, northern Colorado gets closer to 1 million, that economic highway of I-25 from Fort Collins to Cheyenne, from Fort Collins to Denver, is going to need to grow even more. Now, who knows how big that's going to get and if the money's going to be there, but I can tell you with the growth of Fort Collins, traffic will be an issue on I-25. Now, within the city, I would say the desire for traffic is we just passed an active modes plan so that we can work on these paved trails to get more people off the trails, public transportation where we're going to be extending the max north, try to get that ridership up to over 1,000 people a day sooner than later. And the desire is for continue to get people out of their vehicles and off the roads and using other alternative modes. Now, my dad thinks that since COVID shut down and the ability to work remotely, that traffic has decreased. I don't necessarily see that too much. I have done videos about traffic in Fort Collins, and depending on what your perspective is, it could really be a telling story. If you're from Fort Collins, traffic's crazy, it's the worst. If you're from outside of Fort Collins, what traffic? There is no traffic. You sit at one stoplight for one stop and go. But with the growth of Fort Collins in northern Colorado, what is that going to look like? I would say we are in our grid system. There might need to be some expansions of that. The growth, our area landmass is going to continue to grow, and the grid system will continue to go northeast and southeast as we do that. But overall, I think I-25 will continue to be congested. Parts of Fort Collins on Friday afternoons at 4 o'clock when people are trying to get home is going to be congested. But hopefully overall, we're able to not be bumper to bumper, traffic bumper cars. Now, what about the economy of Fort Collins? Recently, we had a podcast that we had Darren Atterbury on, who was the previous city manager. And he said, if anyone ever tells you the backbone of Fort Collins economy-wise is anything but Colorado State University, let them know that they're crazy. And that goes by showing that they're the largest employer in Fort Collins, followed by Larimer County, City of Fort Collins, Hewlett-Packard, Broadcom, Otter Products is there, Agilent Technologies. There's lots of great employers here in Northern Colorado. We have a diverse economy, really education, healthcare, city government, and then we have a little bit of technology coming. And I think we need to continue to see that. One of the economic plan driving factors for the city of Fort Collins is to retain talent. There are startups that are putting down roots in Fort Collins. They like the culture. They want to be able to continue to recruit talent from CSU to work at their startups and build that up. Madwire, OtterBox, these are just a few companies. BillGo Technology, TurboTenant. We want to see these kind of technology companies grow, flourish, and make roots in Fort Collins. If we don't, I think having remote workers is great, but we need to continue to have employers who are bringing in dollars and giving dollars to employees here and spending those dollars in Fort Collins rather than giving dollars to, let's just say California or Texas, Florida, Boston, New York, Seattle, Washington, where a lot of these remote workers have come to live in Northern Colorado, but the value that they're giving are for those companies outside of Fort Collins. So hopefully we can get those. The economy continues to be strong, but grows and brings in great employers in Fort Collins. Now, overall, what does the growth of Fort Collins look like? We have a growth management area, and we should expect it to go from 57 square miles to closer to 80 square miles. We're going to grow northeast and southeast and north, Montava, and then along Mulberry. We're going to see annexation as it makes sense. City of Fort Collins has said as these kind of quote unquote tipping points happen, we will annex property from Mulberry into City of Fort Collins. And I think that's probably the main area you're going to see over the next 10 years is annexation of parts of Mulberry from US 287 on Mulberry to I-25. I think those areas will become part of Fort Collins sooner than later when the Bloom development that is happening on the north side of Mulberry, kind of right near Summit View, as those projects grow, as it makes sense for Fort Collins to kind of bring those into the envelope of Fort Collins, add city police officers, city services, city sewer, streets, curbs, gutters, pavement, all of that good stuff. That's probably what we're going to see over the next 10 years as far as that growth and the addition to the Fort Collins landmass. I think the city of Fort Collins has great potential moving forward, and I think one of the biggest things that people are discussing right now is how do we maintain this kind of small town, very clean community culture, taking care of the curbs and gutters and medians, no littering on the sidewalks, decrease pollution. We have a goal to be carbon neutral as a city, along with many other cities, and that's where electronic vehicles come into play, and we are on the forefront of requiring developments to do that, allowing for incentives for people, solar, different things along those lines. I think if we can continue to grow with the times and the desirability of Fort Collins and Northern Colorado, while maintaining and having that culture and character of let's take care of our community, keep it clean, keep it organized, keep it financially solvent. Don't get taxes too crazy because we want to have too many amenities, but take care of those people that need help. Building that homeless shelter in North Fort Collins, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. That's going to be a next 10-year type of project that'll be complete. I think that Fort Collins has really got a bright future, and if the next 10 years are anything like the last 10 years, Fort Collins is in for a major treat, and I think the people that live in Fort Collins are going to really enjoy it. Now, I appreciate you guys watching, and again, if you guys have any questions or anything like that, especially if you're considering buying, selling, or investing here in Fort Collins, Northern Colorado, give us a call. And if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and maybe share it with another. Now, watch one of these videos that I've shot recently next, and again, thanks for watching.